Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today for the first SafePass webinar of 2020. SafePass CEO Adil Khan is with us this morning to discuss Safe Insight Predictive Analytics. Any questions you have during the session, feel free to send them over using your control panel. So without further ado, let's get started. Adil, good morning.
Good morning and good day to everybody. I know we've got people in different regions joining. And thanks, Emma, for a quick introduction. So today's topic is around SafePass Predictive Analytics, which is a capability that is on our platform that I'll talk about today briefly. But most importantly, I wanted to, as we think about the new year, I wanted to talk a little bit about, what is the vision for 2020 in terms of analytics and why that's important as data continues to grow. And I'll share some interesting observations from our customers and marketplace in general. And at the end, we also have a case study, which is where I want to get to really give you a feel for how the benefits and the business case and the drivers really are helping customers in the real world. And I've got a great example to share with you. So please stay on. And I see a number of people are already on. So we'll jump to the introduction and then go through these topics that you can see on the agenda. Most of you know us, have been following us. This is part of our monthly series, educational series. You're welcome to call us for further, or get in touch with us for further questions or clarifications or specific use cases in your organization. As you can see, we travel the globe promoting governance, risk and compliance, cybersecurity, risk management, written a book on it. And so we hope to see you in person in one of these events around various regions. The next one I think Emma will talk about is coming up in Denver. So we try to get to as many of our customers as possible throughout the regions where we service. About 250 customers, most of them are on cloud, and that creates an opportunity for us to help benchmark and improve the insight based on the collective knowledge that we have gained by working with these companies across all major industries and geographies and pain points really around the world. So let's jump right into the topic. Why is too much data and not enough analytics is really concerning, right? So I start with some stats that's put out by some credible independent organizations like IDC, Harvard Business Review, etc. And so one thing that may not be shocking to you, and it wasn't certainly shocking to me, but putting numbers to it did really put the pain point in an obvious light for me. And so hopefully you'll be able to leverage this information as well. So we know that data is everywhere, but most of the data is still manipulated through different data sources that are compiled into spreadsheets. And so what I found interesting is that 37% of the analysts' time is spent on searching for data. And that's true for most of our client organization, as well as internally here at SafePass, where before we moved to an insight approach that we are using many data sources. The top right, 60% also indicates that there's 5 or more data sources. And I was thinking about our own organization where we have a CRM system, a accounting system, ERP system, et cetera, where we sort of have to hunt down to put a business plan together, which we have recently done for our FY 2020, that we have to gather data from 5+ sources. So it sort of fits, we fall into that 60% ourselves. And we're trying to, of course, with a Safe Insight, implement that internally as well. And $60 billion, wow, that's a big number. Amount of time we all spend in spreadsheets, and it kind of opens your eyes on, knowing that spreadsheets have a lot of errors and they're not very reliable, especially for sensitive information disclosure like your financial statements and other risks in the business. It seems like we spend a lot of time and probably don't get enough return on investment. You would probably agree with that. And 13% of even the data science models are only 13% are making data science that never get deployed, right? So even when people are investing in data sciences and data analytics, they're not always making it to the other side. And so the benefits are not there. So, we'll take a look at a deeper dive of what are some of the lessons learned from the market, from our own customers, and then offer hopefully some advice based on the knowledge that we have gathered over the last year or so around this topic, and see if you can benefit from it as well. So common challenges, take a look at some of the examples of common challenges. Basically, we live in this complex spreadsheet hell, if you will, and what that is basically the that our ability to really share information and facts with our teams, our management, our audit boards, and so forth is limited by the capability we have in our spreadsheets today. And as you can see from this picture, that sometimes we spend more time just trying to figure out a spreadsheet than to solve the strategic problem that we're dealing with, whether it's growth, margin improvements, opening new plants, reducing inventory costs. There may be some high-level initiatives that we're trying to get to, and sometimes I get lost in the muddle of spreadsheets. And that's what the second bullet point on the left is. We spend a lot of time deploying this. Sometimes we'll build custom solutions internally using scripts and tools, and sometimes once the person that actually built that moves on, the solution falls apart and people don't trust it. And then same thing at the source of truth. Especially I work closely with finance organization. That's my background. So when we are disclosing financial results, we have to be completely accurate and truthful, and that's difficult to do if your underlying data structures are shifting or changing, and you can't trust those in different silos. So those are some of the challenges that our customers have reported, and we have validated through the marketplace. And so you kind of move away from spreadsheets to, let's say, BI tools, which were the big thing in the last decade, right? Where everybody has a BI tool. The challenge with some of the BI tools we found from our customers is that it is still highly dependent on IT. Primarily, you have to depend on your IT to build out the models. An example you see on the right, extract that data into some kind of a data warehouse, or understand very complex ERP systems. And then it's labor intensive, and many times the BI technology is changed and the ERP or whatever your data source has changed, and you end up doing sampling, right? Because the cost of just internally maintaining those large databases or data warehouses and staying up with all the data that's growing, it's too much, right? So the big data or volume of growth of data, which is exponential, we can't keep up, our teams can't keep up. And so we are not getting informed in a way where we can manage our business effectively. And so, there are tools available to auditors. For example, ACL is a tool that I grew up using as an auditor. And those tools are not scaling up to some of the more complex big data problems that we face today. So you can write a simple script, you can train a few people in accounting and IT to build their own control script, which is exceptional reporting that we all need in order to find control inefficiencies or defects. But again, those require you to have a complete knowledge of a complex system like an ERP system, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, Oracle, SAP, all that. And so that becomes a challenge as well. So in other words, we are coming from the last decade and we're entering a new decade, and we have to take advantage of some of the latest technologies that are available to us at, in many cases, low cost or just included as part of the service, like we'll talk about. So as a result of all these challenges, where is executive time spent on risk management? And risk management, we all can agree, is really important for achieving your strategic goals, because if risks is the obstacle that gets in the way of us getting to our business objectives. And it shouldn't be shocking, but after we've talked about those spreadsheet numbers, but in many cases it's still shocking that if you look at risk categories and divide them up from strategic risk down to the basic reporting risk, we're spending all our time, or most of our time, under just that spreadsheet hell, right? We're looking at reports, combining them, representing them, running the pivot tables, and the strategic risk is not getting the attention from the management or the operational risk, which are the high value capabilities, which is where we have staffed with experienced executives to help us manage the business and grow and achieve our objectives. So what you're seeing instead is that we're losing opportunities, right? Because our processes are not streamlined at the operational level. We're spending more time down at the reporting level. So how can we solve this problem? That's kind of what we're going to focus on. The greatest risk to market cap is that our resources are really tied up down at the spreadsheet or data level, and data is growing. Tools aren't scaling up to that, especially the advanced analytics that we need to really understand the massive amounts of data we have. So I would like to think a little bit about the vision, for this year being 2020. What's the vision for the enterprise? What is your vision? So you probably have a roadmap. If not, we can help you with that. What should be your analytics vision for this new decade? What are some of the new technologies to consider as part of that roadmap? And how can SafePass fit into that? So we'll talk about that. So to just level set, what does it mean when we say predictive analytics? I've pulled out a few definitions that are commonly accepted by the experts to just kind of get us all on the same page, because reporting has been around as long as the computers have been around. We've been running aging reports on our account receivable, account payable, so financial statements. So what is the difference between analytics and our traditional reporting? Well, the big thing is predictive analytics is really about being able to make predictions about the future outcomes based on that historic data that we've had for years, right? So the data we have had, now we can apply that data, apply statistical modeling to that data, maybe machine learning, feedback loops, which I'll show you how that works in SafePass, and then get to a better outcome, right? And so that is the concept of predictive analytics. As you can see, it's very different than our traditional reporting, which is essentially a rear view mirror world, right? We look what happened. Today, what we get when we get the reports, we find out what happened, right? What was the earnings last quarter? What were the revenue? Did we hit? Did we miss? So that's okay to know. Of course, that's very helpful. And we report that to the market. But wouldn't it be nice if we could project that better so we can forecast our business better and control our resources in a way that meets our growth or margin requirements that are important to us? So the second paragraph there just basically talks a little bit about how can you can apply these sophisticated analytics and model your organization based on the current data you already have available and make it more reliable and tie that into trends. So take different samples or snapshots of your data, whether it's yearly, daily, or even milliseconds, right? And see how you're trending. So now you can create trends. And in that regard, predictive analytics will give you a picture of the future based on your trend analysis, applying some data sciences to it that you can't get from static reporting today. And that's the only way to manage this problem of massively growing data in your organization. So with predictive analytics, you can now exploit these patterns and capabilities with different sets of data that we have access to in your growing data, right? And find those risks and discover those risks and opportunities that we couldn't find through traditional reporting methods, including scripting and Excel and BI and so forth, because the volume of data is too high and it's changing very quickly. And then you can apply that to the behavior. So the most common example that I think of is the computerized trading on Wall Street, right? That's where you're able to consume in almost real time the news that's coming out of the news media and make trade decisions and predict the price of a stock going up or down and make your trade. So real value is created through predictive analytics in that example, but many examples beyond that, as you apply the same technology to your own businesses. So who's adopting it, right? So I always like to think that, we should focus on technologies that are proven, that have been tested, and are now ready for the mainstream. So this definitely looks like, to me, a mainstream technology. It's growing at 22%. It's nearly $11 billion by 2022. So it's a rapid growth according to Xeon Market Research. And so what that means is that predictive analytics is here proven itself out. It's not just a new idea or new technology fad. It's actually producing results, and people are receiving business benefits, which we'll talk about in the subsequent slides. Also, you notice that the cloud-based segment is growing a lot faster, right? There's a study also, if you get a chance, Google it yourself, but what the study really gets into is really about the cloud, right? So the SafePass is, in the cloud. And so there are a number of ways where we can leverage this information better in the cloud than on premise. And I told you just a few minutes ago, we have 200 plus customers. So we can, for example, answer questions like, if you are in, let's say, a investment bank on Wall Street, your close process, how does it benchmark against another bank that's operating in the same environment? And are you above average or are you below average? So being able to find bottlenecks and benchmark them gets organizations really motivated to do better, right? And so having the cloud advantage gives you the capability to really apply the AI and the machine learning capabilities on a massive scale with many terabytes of data that's accessible to us. Of course, it's all metadata, so we protect the data and so forth for individual customers in our cloud. So these are some of the benefits our customers have achieved. I wanted to throw that out there because if you want to go out and create a business case in your own organization for 2020, you would want to, as part of that vision or roadmap, also make a case for the cost and the resource required for this very important initiative whenever you decide to take it, or if you're already underway. These are some of the benefits that'll help you validate if you're getting the full value out of your investments. So predictive analytics makes looking into the future more accurate and reliable. That's the number one thing we hear from our customers. Because you can now look at trends across your data points in a massively scalable way, you can get better predictions about whether it's your forecast for the next quarter, the widgets you're going to sell, which store should carry what inventory, pricing strategies, supplier risks, that's a big deal to us in the global supply chain. So that's very important to us. So our customers tell us that's very important, result of adopting this technology. Second, inventory management, I sort of touched on that already, pricing, etc. Being able to improve that, even the layout of a store, where do people walk in when they get into a store? For those of you that are in the physical retail space competing with big boys like Amazon. Generating new customer responses and purchases. So cross-selling, we all shop on Amazon. We know what that means. That is predictive analytics, right? And you can apply that to many other areas. For example, in manufacturing, our customers using is with IoT to find equipment that's about to fail and make the changes before they occur. The same thing with law enforcement agencies. We have a number of federal and government agencies that use SafePass to protect their constituents and citizens against criminal activities by being able to predict some of the patterns and get to protection that we all need in our society. And then finally, the cybersecurity, cyber risk, fraud, credit card fraud, all of these areas continue to hamper the economies. And by having better monitoring through predictive analytics, we're seeing credit card companies, organizations with wide number of users adopt predictive identity management to resolve some of those challenges and prevent those risks. So just a few benefits. There's a lot more, depends on each industry and so forth, but wanted to give you some idea to help you build out a roadmap or validate your roadmap you already have to make sure you are getting a return on investment. So what is the return on investment? Modern analytics delivers actionable insight. That's our claim. And that claim is supported by Aberdeen Group's latest research on from a financial planning perspective, right? So what happens is once you achieve this new form of analyzing your data through predictive analytics, you see 76% of analytics users can now work with any data. So you're eliminating the need for that IT assistance, which is the bottleneck you're stuck with as the data grows and it's many formats, many data sources, as we've talked about in the previous slide. So now we don't need to depend on IT, which means IT can go and focus more on helping our customers be more successful, our suppliers be more, perform what we expect from them, our employees be happy, and all those things that we really need. They can focus on that instead of just 30 to 40% of time, in my experience, they spend on just doing data, right? And the bottom 2 points, you can see that by doing this analytics capability, what the market shows, companies that have adopted this, they can connect and consolidate into a repeatable process, right? The more connected our departments, organizations are on a platform, more consolidated that information is, we can make our process more repeatable. And again, 66% on the right bottom say that now they can standardize and integrate multiple data sources, which was the pain point we started with. So I'll leave you with these data points to help you consider advanced analytics, as also known, predictive analytics, as we call it, and make a business case, find the problems that are not solvable with your current reporting tools, and where you're spending more time in your resources and not receiving a return on investment. And that'll help you hopefully justify a business case for a solution like ours. So what is the actionable analytics that SafePath can provide you, talking of the solution? So it's been a long journey for us. We didn't just start with predictive analytics in 2020. This has been a journey that we started 10 plus years ago to help companies really become optimized in their information management models. The first step was to, and we expect our customers to have this foundational layer, is to have good audit, risk, and compliance management framework. So the risk and control matrix is documented. It doesn't have to be in SafePath, although we offer products to help you do that. I'll show you on the next slide that we're very flexible. So, you should have good audit practices in place. In other words, you're running your control tests, identifying risks, mitigating those risks, assessing the risk each year. So those are the foundational layers that we've been helping our customers for a decade or more. On top of that, we have built this access management. Because really, predictive analytics requires you to have a good understanding of who's accessing your critical information in your systems, whether it's SAP, Oracle, any data source, a warehouse, a data warehouse. So that's the next foundational block that we've been, again, for 10 plus years, helping customers identify, for example, segregation of duty risks, sensitive access risks, trade secrets, confidential information in structured, unstructured ways, formats. On top of that, we have built out the continuous monitoring platform. So not only can we tell you that your policies and your controls have risks on the bottom 2 layers, but we can also continuously monitor that so that if that risk occurs, we can alert the folks responsible for those controls and therefore make sure your controls are always working for your business and helping you improve that. So an example would be that somebody changed an approval hierarchy on a system that controls your purchase orders, your delegation of authority for journal entries, etc. You want to be notified right away so you can address that issue, whether it's a false positive, whether it's a real issue, whether it's a business decision tied to a policy that was changed. But you want to get the right people in the finance organization to address that proactively. And that's how you become a more proactive, agile organization versus finding out 3 months later when the auditors come in, and that sometimes information is changed already, so it's no use. So once you've built that up, then you come to basically embedding the controls within the process. So you no longer have to wait for someone to make a mistake and then fix it. You can simply prevent it, right? So to just kind of build on the previous example, if somebody is changing an approval hierarchy, which doesn't match the policy, you can prevent that because you've built these layers of defense, lines of defense within your organization. So these 4 foundational technologies have helped us now deploy the latest technology available to us in the market, like machine learning and AI and to be able to get to this predictive analytics level, right? Because we have all this data on the organizations, whether they're using our systems or just providing us access to that data. We can now leverage everything from a policy or a control down at the bottom layer to a user access and an incident, from access management tools to monitoring tools, and the process themselves to then predict the future. So what I talked about, the predictive analytics, I was saying the definition of predictive analytics is the ability for us to take many samples and apply data sciences to that. So it's built on this data volume that you already have in the organization. You can bring it all into SafePath, or you can just simply connect that, and I'll explain that in a second how that works. So here's our platform. You'll see there's a green arrow on the left of this bar, and that's the data probe integration services. And that's how we're able to connect to many different data sources very quickly, discover data, and integrate that. So instead of building these custom APIs, which are very last decade, we can now do all of that through an automated fashion. And that's how we have built connections with all the major ERP systems in the world that hold 90% plus of the most important information. And that's our goal, to stay involved with that, right? And so if you look at the products now, they sort of fit in like a Lego brick model in my mind. So you may already have your risk and control matrix, you may have an audit management tool. So if you have all those tools, we can connect in those, gather the information to help build out the top layer, which is the Safe Insight that we're talking today. Or you can import your data into SafePath through various facilities we have made available. And then that data becomes available for being able to do that top level analysis that I've listed up there, like whether you want to do process analytics to check bottlenecks, benchmark your process, for example, a financial close process, analyze risk, predict, being able to predict your risk better, audit itself, and again, ERP and access risks and so forth, data analytics in general. So all of those analytics become available to you if you populate the data in these repositories in the bottom lower layers. So again, risk and policies, we bring that information in. We gather your access information through AccessPath. This is where we can collect information about whether the user is accessing a certain system, if there's an IDM, how things are configured there. And then on MonitorPath, we have the information about how transactions are flowing through your systems, what type of master data is being changed or applied to. For example, do we have a supplier whose bank account keeps changing every month? That's a big risk. Let's predict that into a future outcome, whether we want to do business with that supplier. Someone can make a decision on that. The configuration changes in your system. So a system that constantly is having configuration changes, what's going on? Is it just not a good app? Is it a application that is not deployed properly, or are we just have outgrown it? And then process paths will tell you, what are we doing? What controls are, constantly being violated or prevented because of the process, the way it flows through our systems, one or more systems, which is a reality for most companies today. It's a heterogeneous environment. You may be doing your financial close in Hyperion, you may be doing your transactional in an ERP system, and you may have spreadsheets to consolidate all that, right? So there's a lot of risk at the process level, which we won't talk about today. There's a separate webinar on that you can listen to on our website. So the top layer, the predictive analytics, really comes into picture once we have a complete picture of the enterprise. And again, you don't need to necessarily implement all these products. They're like Lego bricks. We can leverage what you have, whatever this data source is today, through Data Probe, and start straight up with advanced analytics. As a matter of fact, we have channel partners like management consulting firms that simply use Safe Insight, audit firms that use audit analytics to just perform audits using just the Safe Insight for their clients by gathering the rest of this information. So again, that's kind of the information management framework that that we have in place. And then to drill a little bit deeper into that framework, what does that consist of? Let me give you a quick view of that as well. So Safe Insight actually includes a rules repository, and that's kind of our secret sauce or a recipe, how we enter this predictive analytics market as compared to other players you might have. Because we come from this experience of helping 250 plus customers over the past decade with over 100 years of risk management knowledge around ERP system and just in our management team, we have built out all possible code combinations of risks that we have seen in the market across industries, across geographies, across technologies, right? So those three-dimensional risks are available in our catalog, which is what we have discovered talking to our customer. Now those customers are in our cloud, and so as they discover new risk, it enriches our rules repository. That makes us unique, and that's very important to our customer. It's one thing to give somebody some tools to figure out, and that's great for the technology folks to help you get going. But without best practices, predictive analytics, in my mind, is not very effective, right? So think about that. So predictive analytics is based on rules repository that SafePass has built and grown over years and decades of experience, and that includes, for example, if I'm talking segregation of duties, what are the controls that most audit firms audit? We have that information because all the major audit firms, including E&Y, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, and many other firms, Protiviti, Grant Thornton, they all have been exposed to our rules repository as part of their client audits and so forth. So that's the real value you get, and that's number one. And then the second thing that's really important to our customer is data discovery, right? Because not all their data is in one data source. And while we cover 90% of your key data source, which is your ERP system, you also have data in spreadsheets, you have data in Access database and some other Oracle custom app. So you want to be able to really bring that into a graph that you can then find hidden relationships, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So interact with your data quickly. You don't have time in this day and age as data is growing at a rapid rate to go and figure out every data source. So we have built out the technology in Data Probe that can go against a data source and use metadata, for example, the supplier data, to find the supplier attributes in Oracle, eBusiness Suite, Oracle Oracle ERP Cloud, SAP, NetSuite, whatever the data source is, right? We can quickly and dynamically gather that information that is so critical for you to get results, actionable intelligence, right? And then we have also included risk analysis. So risk analysis enables us to quantify the risk, prepare adequate risk treatment plans, and we come from that risk background. So, being able to apply various risk methodologies to identify risk, whether it's fraud risk or financial misstatement risk and so forth, that enables us to then provide that predictive analytics. Process optimization. So once we have the information about the rules and benchmarks and we have discovered the data, we've done the analysis and the risk, now we can say, okay, where do we have the bottlenecks? For example, to bring that to real world, let's say that in your procure to pay cycle, you have found that, you have spent, 1% of your total assets in overpayments, right? And so being able to then get it down to your peer levels, let's say is 0.5 or better, you can now find those bottlenecks and apply the controls that will remove those inefficiencies and waste from your process. And we call that quantitative measures. Because many times I'll go talk to organizations where, say, IT will tell me, well, our system is configured exactly how business wants it. I go to business, they tell me, well, I have all these problems executing my business and meeting my KPIs, right? And so that is where we find silos. And to break down those silos, when we provide a quantitative measure, it supplements the qualitative measures that we hear in interviews and through our channel partners like the audit and management firms, as well as internal management, right? So that brings out a common theme or a common understanding of facts that are undisputed. And so it makes it easier for decision makers to get to results they're looking for. And finally, we offer the simulation capability. So the simulation capability enables us to run the what if scenarios. Like what happens if I open up my procure to pay cycle and change the terms that I have right now to a more aggressive terms? What happens if I open up my customer service portal and enable the customer service to do credits right at the same location where they're taking orders. So now you can answer with predictive analytics, you can simulate and answer more interesting questions at the strategic level of that pyramid that I showed you versus trying to figure out the spreadsheets, right? So you're more organized, you're making better decisions, and therefore the company is doing better. So what that means is that SafePass is a multi-platform. Data can be anywhere. That's our commitment to you. And we will leverage that data and turn that into analytics. It can be on-premise, it can be in the cloud, it can be in a structured format like a database like Oracle or SAP. It could also be in your Office, Microsoft Office, Excel, Word, whatever. We will find that data through the data source. We'll coalesce that into a useful insight that you can help run your business. And the way we do that is by using metadata and secure transfer methods. So once we have this all connected together, the way you can benefit from SafePass is by creating this graph, enterprise data graph that you see in that picture. So we take data from various sources on the left, graph here, and we pull that data in. And this data is not just the data that is linked by humans. For example, there's a PO, there's a three-way match, right? We all know that we don't pay invoices. The payment doesn't go out till the three-way matches. So the purchase order matches the receipt amount and the invoice amount, and that's when you release the payment. So that's a known control we have. But there are hidden controls. For example, you have a tolerance level. We will go ahead and pay, and depends on your industry, you will go ahead and issue a payment if it's within 2%, 1%, whatever the tolerance you have set up in your system. But now you want to know, like one client, it's a real world example, is dealing with this problem on a global level. In their ERP system, they can only see by a region. So they have a global customer that is buying their product across EMEA, APAC, and US, but the ERP system can only controls that tolerance level at an entity level. So they don't realize that they're shipping products in the US, but in Asia Pacific, they've actually violated that tolerance level. So the accumulated level is the problem. So that's what I call as a hidden link. With enterprise data graphs, you can find those hidden links. You can also see certain types of individuals in certain organizations are overriding that parameter, right? So maybe they need more training, maybe they need better controls or education, whatever that is, right? Now you can find those hidden links, and that's what makes predictive analytics so important for risk events management. And then it goes through all of this data that we have gathered and linked, goes through our data analysis engine, which is AI enabled and becoming more and more AI. We're putting more pattern recognition into it. So it's more reasoning and it feeds back itself. So now the algorithms you can apply to that data can be fuzzy matching, for example, similar invoice numbers and so forth, to use a simple example, to more complex fraud risk analysis like Benford analysis, clustering, fuzzy, and so forth, anomaly detections, mean analysis, right? There are many well-defined mathematical models that can be configured in these engines to analyze information. And then you go into a workbench that so what you're doing now is, instead of the management chasing and finding out about the problem in a reactive manner, now they can predict that in that analytics workbench. They can slice and dice those risks and make decisions using the controls catalog and deploy those controls. And when those controls are violated, we feed back into this, a feedback system, right? So that self-learning system now gets smarter with your time. And that's how the growth in data, which is everywhere, can turn into insight that's actionable. Okay, so that's in a nutshell how we're helping our customer. Just to drill down on that, what does that mean when I say hidden links? Here's just a slide to explain. A typical customer knows their input and output layers, but what we are unable to do with predictive analytics is find those hidden links like the examples I shared on the previous slide. So just a little more detail on that. So yeah, let's talk about a case study, how our customers are benefiting. And I pick retail customer as an example because retail is in a war, right, with Amazon. So we picked a company that is a global leader in lifestyle footwear, and they use SafePass. We recently finished a project with them. They were at one of our events late last year and talked about their success. So this is a summary of the company and their success with SafePass. Company develops and distributes footwear. They have many different channels. So an omni-channel like all other retailers. They have wholesale, they have retail, they have international wholesale. And the way they distribute their product is through concept stores. They have partner stores, so and the warehouses around the world, and they build the product, manufacture the product around the world as well, including China and other outsourced countries. So we sat down with their executive team, and what we came up with some predictive analytics use cases. They may or may not be relevant to you, but for retail, this is a good starting pack. And we have similar starter packs for all major industries. So chances are we have covered a specific industry that you're in, whether it's a government agency or a financial institution or a retailer like this. So in case of a retailer, the audit of the accounts payable is very important. They use a lot of suppliers. Each store, may have local suppliers, that everything from guys coming and changing the light bulb and putting a network cable in. In fact, in this specific example, I'm not going to give out anything confidential, but one thing we did find is one of those suppliers had a connection with a local store manager, and they were invoicing and paying invoices for the same work in a duplicate manner. So you can imagine that was something that was really disturbing, and you can extrapolate that into hundreds of those stores having the same problem, right? So that was one of the right away, within I think a couple of days, we caught that, and the management was very happy with that analytics right away. So it essentially paid for the entire investment, paid for itself just on that first item. On top of that, we had merchandise audit. So of course, retail stores live and die by the merchandising, the pricing, placement, and sell-through of those products within the organization. So they wanted to be able to recover their losses on the operating expenses. Vendor risk management, just being able to pick the right vendors, make sure they're doing work with the right vendors. There's no fraud, there's no conflict of interest, etc. And I addressed that with you just a minute ago. Freight audits. Freight's a big challenge for anybody that has a supply chain, right? Not just retailers. When you bring in a merchandise, sometimes your contract says FOB is included, not included, so forth. So those contracts don't always match the invoice. And while our ERP systems do a good job of managing freight on the three-way match, freight's usually excluded from that or falls through the tolerance level. But you can imagine if you're buying in billions, 3 to 5% of tolerance level can end up into real money. Media audits, so customer, in this case, they're in a high-end fashion, so they use media agencies in New York. They also do direct advertisement, and so are you paying twice for media insertion, media plans through agency, and then you get the invoice directly to yourself? A common problem for anyone that uses media and media agencies. And contract compliance. And telecoms, I have some telecom clients that have this issue, significant issues around compliance with their consumer contracts that are constantly changing. New product comes out, new iPhone comes out, they introduce new ideas, new plans, and they don't match what the billing is, and it can hurt your customer service. It can also hurt your revenue and margins, of course. So this is, of course, a sample. I wouldn't share actual information, so I've sanitized that, but you can see that this customer was now able to see their claims, their AP claims, much more effectively than they could in spreadsheets. So, and this is straight from the source, from the data source. And this customer has many data sources. They have merchandising systems, they have POS systems, they have supply chain, they have financial systems, of course, HR and other things too. So, there are 8 or 10 different systems that we needed to collect the data to get it accurate and useful for management and make it repeatable. So we don't need a army of a team of data scientists sitting in their office every day doing this analysis, or worse, wasting time with those spreadsheets where the $60 billion is spent every year. Okay, so you can see that by doing this type of analysis, we can see that in Middle East Africa region, we have the highest claim ratio. That means we have invoice issues where people are overcharging us in that market, and we're having to go back and claim those overpayments over time. And as soon as we implement the solution in Q2, you can see that was our peak. And then after Q2, we implement the solution, and that scales down to a reasonable level, which is our acceptable tolerance for AP claims of under $100,000 in line with APAC, and we hope to get it down to the Americas, right, which is our target for EU and America, is target down here. Okay, so that's an example of how predictive analytics can predict and protect and prevent those risks from occurring. Merchandising. So again, most companies that carry inventory, whether it's a retailer or wholesaler, this is the lifeblood of your profit margin, right? Your inventory's wrong, you're screwed, right? You got to be able to get it, and it's getting harder and harder to do, right? Everybody's buying online. There's a lot of online stuff. So where do you place the inventory? Where do you not put it? What products should be in the market, in the showroom versus online? So you can see in this example of analysis just in the US, we had some pricing errors, and we have some returns, and we have defective goods, right? So you can see that those trends are impacting our margins. And you can see that, for example, if I just pick on pricing error, I can see that I mispriced my products in South Central. And so my product was overpriced. Probably the product pricing that I have in Northeast, for example, which is a higher living standard market, cost of living is higher, does not work well in Southeast and South Central. So my pricing errors are impacting my sales on merchandise. I'm not able to move that product fast enough, so I'm taking a loss on that. And so then this graph further explains to me that, look, I'm promoting the products here in Northeast, the highest I can achieve higher pricing, whereas down in South and North Central and South Central, I have to heavily discount the product to achieve that same sell-through. So I'm taking a loss. So I need to figure out how to get this merchandising right. And then you can drill down into each of these down to a store level, right? How's in each store, what is the placement of a product? Which product should I put at the entrance, and so forth. So really helping the enterprise operationally and strategically, as opposed to looking at inventories in a spreadsheet. Same thing with vendors. Where are my vendors? Where are they coming from, and what are their compliance levels? So in this case, they're tracking compliance levels. For example, if somebody comes into your store, you want to make sure they're workman comp, so they change the cable, they fall, they don't put a claim in, right? So you want to make sure they're bonded and all that. That's part of their compliance. There's a whole set of issues that retailers go through, and you may have your own industry compliance issues depending on which industry you're in. Your credit scores, very important. We have watch list scanners that can check not only just credit scores, but also are you on any kind of supplier list not to do business. Financial services sector uses that quite a bit for us. Beyond credit risk, they're looking for what's called AML, anti-money laundering kind of a test that you got to run as a financial institution. So whatever those your industry-specific vendor risks are, or customer risk, whatever that is, we want to be able to manage that on a dashboard using massive amounts of data available within the organization, as well as through third-party sources like Dun & Bradstreet or Thomson Reuters, etc., which we integrate with. And then quality, how well are they performing against their SLA, service level agreements? Are they within the product quality within our range or not? Freight is another example. I'm coming to an end here. I think there's quite a bit to cover and running out of time. So freight's a common example for retailers, but as I mentioned, other segments also, wherever there's supply chain, there's this risk. So you can see that year to date, trade and shipping costs So we're trading, and our shipping costs should line up. So as our trade comes down, or to trade, sorry, not come down, but trading is a freight cost is tied to it, and we can analyze it, drill down into it, into actual reports. For example, looks like Augusta Mall is where freight costs are lower, but of course our shipments are lower. So they're trending in the right way. If I see a trend that is incorrect, for example, this one here seems like my sales are not trending the same way my freight is. My shipping costs are higher the way this trend goes. So now if you're a merchandising manager for the company, you can really drill into it and resolve the issues. Same thing with freight cost ratios. Where are my highest freight costs coming in? So again, that matches up with Accent Display Corp. So what can we do to improve our freight costs, because that's impacting our margin. And sales, of course, where are we seeing the sales? Of course, Christmas, we have the highest sales here. But what holidays do we need to work on better this year? Where do we do the media spend versus holidays? So it looks like our sales are dipping on Independence Day, so we got to probably do a better job of applying the media expense and agency expense. Also, we noticed that around here, our media spend is crossing the agency fee. In other words, our agency fee is high, but our media spend is low. So it seems like we're backlogging some media work, agency work that's not making into media, but then maybe that's what explains why our back to school takes off, because that's when most people buy shoes. Kids buy shoes when they go back to school. So it's an interesting insight that is predicting your business, helping you become more productive as a retailer. And this is the type of dashboards that you can get from Safe Insight. So while our focus is risk management, but that risk management includes operational risk as well. And by mitigating that risk, you can improve your bottom line. Some just very basic examples. Again, this is this is just demo data. So you can see that I can find duplicate transactions, which looks like I'm overpaying. I can catch that before it becomes an issue. And I can see supplier changes where I can catch who did what when, so I can avoid supplier issues of unauthorized data changes. I won't get into a lot of technical details, but just to make sure you have the confidence that there's a product behind all these slides, please come out to us and set up a demo to see this in more detail in real time. But just to give you a teaser here, really, is that this is where we set up the managed data source. I mentioned Data Probe quite a bit. So this is where Data Probe is set up, where we can start setting up snapshots. You can see you can set up different URLs for web services. You can also set up ports for a local data source within your premise. So that's one of the secret sauces that we do. And then, like I said, we have a rules repository. So many of these ERP objects are available straight out of the box. We can also discover objects using Data Probe. So if I'm interested in managed journal authorization, suppliers, whatever that is, different parties, I can combine these into useful information across multiple data sources without having to do all that consortium in your spreadsheet that are error prone 90% of the time, as the researchers tell us. So once I have all of this information at my fingertips, I can workflow it, right? And that's another area where SafePass, coming from that enterprise background, differentiates from some of the new entrants in predictive analytics, because it's not just about reporting this great information, it's about execution and measuring that execution. So what we're showing you here is essentially a workflow that is going to go out for an invoice approval, for example. And we want to track whether that was followed through or not. So in this case, somebody changed a force approval from yes to no, or they changed a parameter in your payable options. It goes all the way, and it comes back with as a workflow with a response from the owner of that risk or that control. And then the management and the auditors can independently review how this control ultimately is working to help us streamline our operations. Right, so everything is benchmarked and controlled, and you can assign that, and it's dynamically changed as very flexible, so it's easy to set up. And ultimately, this workflow will help you become more proactive and optimize in any of the process where you apply that. and then you'll have a centralized dashboard to see. So essentially, in a nutshell, what we're doing for you is providing you this capability to identify risk and bottlenecks with Safe Insight and then remove them to achieve results that you can't otherwise get from standard controls. And that's where I'm going to close off. So your standard controls will put you the basic information, but then applying predictive analytics, you can get more advanced results. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma to close out the meeting. If you have any questions, Emma?
Yes, we have had a couple of questions come in. Can we actually trust the data? Does your solution come with any kind of data protection capability?
Great question. So Data Probe has capabilities to track data. We are, of course, so let me just kind of back up and say compliance is very important to us. At the heart of our own company, we named the company SafePass. So we are SOC 1, SOC 2, GDPR, CCPA, all of those compliance are in place, independently verified by third parties. So you're welcome to request that access before you do business with us. But on top of that, we also make it possible for you to control what data you send, what format you send it. So the tool Data Probe is completely in your control. You can decide which field, if you want to obfuscate a field that is under compliance, you can choose to do that and only send us data that will be used to drive the insight, but not any kind of confidential information. And of course, we can scramble and the data when it's at rest. It's certainly scrambled when it's sent over the dedicated tunnels that we establish for data transfer.
Okay,
Anything?
Great. Yes, how long does it take to deploy?
Yeah, so the example, of course, I used was a company that I worked with recently, but it really depends on the scope of work. What do you want to do, where you are in your maturity level, what data sources you have. So quite a few parameters, but we do provide a free needs analysis. So we'll sit down with you, come on site if required, and kind of inventory all your data sources, understand your predictive analytics objectives, understand your pain points, and provide the time that will be required with our resources and your resources together working as a team to achieve those goals like any other enterprise system. But just to kind of give you a benchmark, the examples I've shared, that took us about 6 to 8 weeks from getting the requirements down to delivering the results in those dashboards. And that's a typical, I would say an average for our customers. Some take longer, others are quicker, but that's typical.
Okay, well, I think that's everything. So thank you to everyone for joining today. As Adil mentioned at the start of the session, if you do wish for further discussion, then please reach out to me, Emma. You can catch us, as always, on LinkedIn and Twitter for updates and find all our resources, including the latest newsletters and educational content on our website. So if we don't see you in Denver, where we'll be at the Rocky Mountains Oracle User Group, where our Senior Director, Bob Enders, will be presenting user provisioning in ERP applications. Then we'll see you at our next webinar in February. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye.